I love it when recording is in progress.
What's going on, man?
Hey, we got a new show, Craig.
I know. I think it's pretty solid to start for sure. I don't want to, do any foreplay before the act, but yeah, I thought this is kind of fun. Sorry to see about your Bears there. I was kind of watching to the end. I figured you weren't going to start until it was over, and then it took me couple seconds to get started after. But yeah, it was a good game at least. I mean, compared to where
I
you've
mean, it
been.
was it was a much better season than I could have hoped for.
Yeah,
And that throw,
was insane. All right, you ready to do this thing?
let's get into it.
Welcome to this episode of the Prestige Ish Media Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lake, and with me, our very own Hedge Knight himself. It's Dan McNair. Dan, how are you this evening?
I've got gouty toes and cloudy ears, but I'm ready to do this.
Russian hands and gouty fingers. So, we never really talked during the Game of Thrones run. Like, we weren't really actively in contact around that time. Certainly, we've covered House of the Dragon together. And while it is definitely the same universe, it definitely feels like a different type of show. This feels maybe more to what we're akin to, not to bury the lead, but from a Game of Thrones show. That's kind of where I start. Initial thoughts and a rating on your side.
It's a lot to take in because
That's what she said. Go ahead.
I'm coming into this completely and a blank slate, not really knowing a lot. I've definitely got the Game of Thrones lore down. I'm pretty solid in House of the Dragon, but I don't know a lot about this particular story. And for a character guy, I think that was a lot of the strength of some of my favorite shows, including Game of Thrones. And I think the character development in this episode was great. Dunk has a very nice humility to him and like an unassumedness that you don't get from many characters in the Game of Thrones universe. So I found him very likable. But I had a problem in this episode in that there's no conflict at all. There's no, geez, I wonder what happens next episode. It was very much day in the life. And I get it, they're going to have a lot of ground to cover, but when you're used to a show with dragons and battles and sword fights and all that sort of stuff, it felt underwhelming in that regard to me. So I gave it a 6-6.
Oh boy, the
Plenty of room
action
to
lord.
grow. That's what she said.
So I've got it as an 8, and I thought I might be low. I didn't really know what more they could have done in this first episode to excite me. I wasn't
Maybe
counting.
put in an
I was
antagonist.
gonna say, wasn't counting on the action lord weighing in. I think the antagonist is the whole tournament. And you've got this guy that basically, his horses are probably his most important thing to him. Fellow dog guy, I can kind of relate. And if he loses, he's got nothing. We had the conversation, what's a night without a horse? At first, I thought a night, not like sleeping with a horse, not like banging, but just, I sleep with my dogs. But no, like a night, like the act of a night without a horse is not a night kind of thing. But
I got a question for
who's
you.
on first? Go ahead.
Where does a hedge knight keep his coppers?
I don't know.
In a hedge fund.
There we go. Yeah, so I liked it obviously more than you did. I wasn't counting on the action lord weighing in on the lack of action early, but I think it was just setting the table, and I thought there was a good symmetry. My understanding of the book, which neither of us have read the book so much so is we barely knew the name of the book that we were covering, which is
So
Dunk and Egg. Go ahead.
let's start here. It's not even a book.
Oh, I thought it was is it a short story? That's what I
I
thought it
think
was,
it's
is
a
what I was
short
gonna say.
story,
Yeah.
but just to reference to maybe any of our Stranger Things listeners when we were talking about is Stranger Things going to become Star Wars? I really don't want an entire HBO doing a whole show based around like George R. Martin's haiku or something like
Well,
that.
that's the only kind of she puts out anymore. So I think you're kind of stuck with it. But I'll say this, based on the premise of this being what I understood to be kind of like a short story or these novelettes or whatever you want to call them, this episode felt like a little novelette, and I thought some episodes may or may not be shorter than this, but This was 42 minutes, including the fluff around the edges. And
Ah, the episode length lord chiming in with his approval.
yeah, I thought this one ran a little long than what I'm expecting from the series. But in that regard, it was a nice little, you get in, you get out. And I think Egg is very good. I think they nailed Egg. Like, I think that child actor is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to seeing maybe not his bald white Targaryen-esque complexion, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing
Craig,
it.
a big fan of St. Jude's commercials.
I mean, I was ready to, what is it called? UNICEF him some coppers. Good God. But I thought he did great. So let's kind of get into this thing. A real cheerful start. We start with a grave and three horses. Now, each horse is different. Is there like a joke that like a white horse and a brown horse and a black horse walk into a
Walk
bar?
into a bar.
Yeah. He's burying what we come to understand as Sir Arlen, which is his knight, right? That he squired for, that knighted him, allegedly. He said he doesn't really have the words, that there ought to be a sept in here. He says he never hit him except when he earned it, except that one time it was the inn boy who ate the woman's pie. If I had a dollar for every time I heard that one. One thing I thought was interesting that I didn't feel like we were used to in Game of Thrones, like I feel like we'd had cut scenes like for like Bran the Builder type flashbacks, but I don't remember any like really quick cuts like this. What about you? Like, to me, the filming, like they kind of tried to establish a real different tone early with some of these quick like flashback shots of him getting slapped and things like that. Did that jump out to you at all?
Yeah, that was new, and it told me like, so this is a different vision within this universe. And I liked it because it wasn't prolonged and drawn out. It was like a quick reference and you're good and it's right back. Yeah, so it was great for my attention span. It was almost like the Game of Thrones equivalent to a Family Guy sub reference. Remember the time, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sometimes like your mileage may vary on stuff like this, but I think there were two kind of rounds of this, and I don't think they overdid it early. We'll see how it goes as the show progresses. So he's talking to the horses, I think, laying under one of the trees after it. He said he'd eat like a king if he sold you three. At one point, he talked about being on the city watch and said something you're used to hearing: stop raping, sir. But he also said it fits my grip as well as it ever fit his. You're welcome. And, he starts talking about how he's going to have this tourney. You get the Game of Thrones theme to where you think you're going to go into maybe an opening title scene, and you just get him like pooping behind a tree, like spraying everywhere. I could have done that. I guess it's prepping us early for the boys in a few months. What was your thought of the rest of that open there?
I love the stop raping, sir. I thought that was kind of a funny line. I did jot it down. I noticed that too because I'm not really sure what to expect from this show. And I thought it was a very pronounced moment, what you point out there, when you can feel the crescendo of the Game of Thrones and it's starting, and then they totally zag you into pissing and I'm like,
Yeah.
is this show a comedy? Because you're the opening credits lord. Like you're expecting like in this universe, all we've seen is like an amazing tapestry of names and people and like a huge production value. And instead we get, you know, Mr. Hanky coming out behind the tree and just a quick like title card.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't what I was expecting. We'll say that. And so early, like the pros of it are they're trying to set a different tone early, go against your expectation. The cons are I had to watch this guy, spew shit out of his ass. I could have done
Well,
without
and for
that.
somebody that heard plenty of Gen V hate for any ass cheek signing,
I
you got a good dosage of it here for an episode that you gave an 8 to.
Yeah, I think and there was allusions to more rape, dry raping with the sword of sorts.
I
Lots of
mean,
interesting
this
action
has got to
here.
be your all-time high ass cheek score. right?
For an episode with prominent men's butts that I had to watch, it might be.
Like
It's
it
up
says
there.
nudity going into it, and you're like, ooh,
Yeah, I mean, I
no.
was gonna point the typical no boobs. We're in multiple horror houses, no boobs, but I gotta see Sir Dunk spew shit out of his ass. Thank the gods. Thank the sept for that.
I mean, if this were The Boys, you would have given it a 5.
No, immediately what I thought of was the boys. As soon as I saw it coming out of ass, I'm like, oh, we're getting ready for the boys. The boys are back in town, some might say. So we run into Egg. He tells him he needs, like, I think oats for all three. He says he'll give him a copper if he'll do well. So the one thing that I think we do know about the lore is that Egg, I think, is a Targaryen because there was the Targaryen at the wall that was like the banished Targaryen, the blind guy at the wall that was Jon Snow's buddy.
Old
And
Aemon or
yeah,
Aegon
I thought it
or
was Aemon, and I thought Egg was the kid, and maybe Aegon was the name, and it was short for Egg. But like when he's dying and he's like dreaming about little egg or saying little egg or something like that. So that's the real entry point that I have to Egg. We assume he's a Targaryen, but he obviously doesn't have heavy status here. And we do know there's a lot of bastards in the House of the Dragon's time that precludes this. So us not knowing the full lore, we don't really know that part of where he fits in. But I was interested to see him early. Like we see him early and I perk up right away to see where it's going. Thoughts from you?
no, I think that's a great call out here. Being bald is a good disguise of how we perceive Targaryen. That's a good zag. He mentions Ashford Meadows for the tournament. Do you have any geography lord reference to Ashford Meadows?
I don't. What about you?
I think it's somewhere near Highgarden,
Okay, that would make
which,
sense where the Tyrells were, right?
yeah, yep, good there. And it's some sort of crossroads between like Dorne and Highgarden and kind of the southwest part there.
Okay. Yeah, and I know Dorne famous for wine and Pedro Pascal and orgies of some sort. So there's that. So yeah, we get this kind of empty inn. It didn't seem like it was like very well traveled, but there was one guy in there. I couldn't tell if the guy that was in there was a Targaryen. He looked a little Laris-esque. He's the one that said, I dreamed of you, stay the away from me. And we get this, I don't know if she's an innkeeper or a waitress or both. Like, I don't know how it all like pins in. Go ahead.
So you mentioned him maybe being a Targaryen. I didn't know about that, but did you see the coin he put down?
It was a Targaryen coin, so that might
Yeah,
be
it
have
had
been
the
what I
same
registered
symbol
there.
that's on the flag. So
Yeah, I was wondering if he was like Laris's, from House of the Dragon, his like fallout from the Targaryen spoils.
we can get a good look at his foot, huh?
I know we do get some gout references. If he winks off to it later, we'll know. But yeah, one interesting quote also just, kind of sign of the times thing. And we don't really get a lot of current Game of Thrones references, but this felt like maybe dancing around one. She said, I never knew joust to change the price of eggs. Kind of interesting. He comes back to the stable, and little Egg is on his horse and is, in his night gear that apparently smells. He says this is a war horse, not a boy's pony. And he's, we get kind of not just here, but later on, this you know, what do you know? All the knights? He's no, just the good ones. And he's your belt's made of rope. And it's not like this exactly, but it's like a little bad Santa-esque where you've just got this kind of, smart ass kid, but who's very kind of soft and unassuming. And, this big kind of oaf. He mentions that his mother's dead, right? Because he thought the innkeeper was his mother, which obviously the innkeeper is not.
Yeah.
He mentions that he was an orphan once, so that's, maybe they're tie-in together. And the boy wants to squire for him, which Dunk does not want to allow for. Anything you want to make out of that?
Just with a lot of the shows that we've covered, and I'm watching another now, so I'm surrounded by this trope of the straggler that doesn't want to take with them this child. And usually it's like a post Armageddon type thing. But we've been through The Last of Us, we've been through Station 11. I'm watching a show called Sweet Tooth. We've got it here where I'm a traveler. I don't want any kid around me. Why am I doing this? I'm sure we're going to cover Punky Brewster. It just, it's all hitting me at once. This is quite the trope that seems to be going on.
Yeah, and I guess I would say like he's a little bit younger than some of the other ones. I mean, it is like closer in age to Station 11, but I get where you're going, and it's definitely, I mean, it's definitely a movie trope. Almost, every TV show's got to have its, library episode, or it's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of like TV tropes, but there's a bunch of TV tropes. This is a movie or a TV show drama trope. It's not like a sitcom trope, but there's a
Yeah.
million sitcom tropes that we're used to. This is a different type of trope, I guess. But yeah, I think that's fair to bring up. This contest is for knights, and Sir Duncan finds his way through Ashford and like up to, the person who's handling the tournament for the lord of the area. So, do we know Ashford? Is it the Baratheons area? Because we end up in that stag tent. Is this guy that's organizing the tournament organizing it for the Brathians, or do we really know who this is for?
So there's two names they mention, and Baratheon is definitely one that ties into the Game of Thrones lore. But he's got a tent there, so it's not like his castle.
Right, correct.
They also mention the Dundar. I don't know if you caught that or if you remember Lord Dundarian.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the name, but I'm not registering exactly who it was.
So
Is
he's the
is
flaming sword knight that was like brought back to life
okay.
um a handful of times, and he was a lot in like the final season of the show. But those are just call outs I'd point out to the Game of Thrones person just to underscore it. There's not really much to be gleaned from it, but they like to throw around these different house names a lot. So we got a little bit of that here.
So we did get the introduction to the Ashford chair, which is they hang you naked by your, feet ass first, and lower you on you lower your ass on the sword and fuck you dry, some version of that. But then he says, just kidding. There's some conversation though of imagine if we just allowed like a scourge of commoners to enter this thing, and some of it's coming. He's like saying it serious, but he's just kidding. And everyone's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. So he says that Sir Manfred will remember us. So that's what it kind of sets up for. One just funny curse as he hits the door. He starts to say seven on his way out, like he hits the door on the way in and the way out. We hear the
Which
pros. Go
did,
ahead.
I just want to point out the echoes between that and Thaddeus in the suit in Fallout. It
Oh,
was
okay.
basically the same joke that we saw in two completely different universes.
Or in Gandalf and the Hobbit, and you've got squires in both Fallout and this now. So who knew we would get back-to-back squire shows? So we hear the prostitutes or whores or ladies of the night, depending on what you want to call them, I guess. Prostitute seems like maybe a more like non-Game of Thrones, like that more
That's a little
updated.
too classy.
Yeah.
Hooer.
They're talking about how a hedge knight is like a knight but sadder. And then they talk about Sir Manfred must have fucked his wife, and he's haven't got a wife. Hey, governor. They talk about how Sir Manfred wants to turn the whole world red, and they're already red. This is, I think this is all cheeky. It reminds us of Roz a little bit and Theon, or just that kind of dog and pony show, two other gingers, if you will. Roz's great grand whore here. Any comments from you on them other than we didn't get to see any boob, but we got plenty of male ass?
And I don't know that I wanted to see any boob here, but I thought just the innocence. I don't know this actor that plays Dunk, but like he was the strength of this episode for me.
Yeah, and I felt like the two mains, like him and Egg, obviously that's the novelet or whatever you want to call it. Like these two are going to be very prominent, and I thought they nailed those two as well as they could. So we mentioned there's some quote here. I don't know if it's when he's talking to his horse or what, but he mentions a hedge knight being the truest kind of knight. We get one guy, I think, calls him a blue-eyed cunt, and it's like his cousin trying to get him to fight, the other guy, and he says he has matters to attend to, and he says matters of the hedge, I have no doubt. Obviously, like a little bit of fish out of water here, and obviously an awkward time, so he looks to camp outside of the grounds. Did you at any point say somebody just going to steal at least two of these horses at some point? Dear God.
I did
Uh,
have that thought, and I also thought that they were going to like extreme efforts to explain to us what a hedge knight was. I mean, it's the title of the episode, and
well,
it's not a term I'm familiar with. So it was almost like this is the idiot's guide to hedge knighting.
and I'm pretty sure like chapter one is shitting behind a tree.
Get ready for chapter 3 going bare ass into the creek.
Yeah, so we get some of that. He's not really good at washing his clothes. He leaves the horses there to come back by evening. The hookers say that he's sleeping with gouty toes. Lord Manfred is. We get a fake dead hooker with the eyes of the seven, or how they dress them. Do we know what was going on there? Because she was alive. I thought maybe she would be in that like puppet play we got, but it wasn't for that. Were they sneaking her out, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly because you see those like eyeball painted rocks on her face, and you're like, oh, are these like Sisters of the Sept like practicing for like funeral rites or something? And yeah, then she just pops up, ah, we're playing. This is a horror game. And
Horror games. Okay. One thing that was interesting to me is they kind of start talking to Sir Duncan like he's just a big piece of meat and like a different type of horror in this universe, if you will. And I just thought it was like an interesting comparison that, all these people are kind of to serve the entertainment of maybe their higher ups in this universe. And that's kind of how they were talking to him. Any other thoughts there?
oh no, I think that's a good spot, but we can digress.
So we get the dragon puppet show. Hell of a good puppet, I'll say. Obviously, Sir Duncan has a little bit like of an eyes longing for the, mistress of the play there. We end up with Lionel. Oh no, first there's the cousin of the other guy that we saw, and he calls him a half man, and he's I'm no half man, which we're thinking like halflings, which would be hobbits, and he's like half man, half giant. So they go to the stag tent. That's where Lionel Baratheon is. What did you think of this like dynamic? Like, I was wondering if this, cousin, he starts talking about how the person shield you pick to fight is so important. And then we kind of have Dunk first dismiss it, but then acknowledge that's one of the most important decisions, but he doesn't really know who these people are. So I thought that was maybe setting up for this cousin to maybe give him some inside intel into who some of these people are. Anything else you noticed or want to bring up here?
Well, the first thing is I'm a little bit spiraling as Time Lord here. And the fact that the play features predominantly a dragon, I'm assuming there are still dragons at this point in time, probably less than there were in House of the Dragon, but not extinct like they are at the beginning of Game of Thrones. So I'm
But
just
I think we
wondering
got to
where
get,
dragons are on
I,
our radar
I
here.
think we got to be pretty close to the end of the dragons, I would think. I would imagine a lot of these people haven't seen them, but we'll learn more as we go. But my guess is after whatever happens in House of the Dragon, we're probably on our way out of dragons.
And my next observation is Baratheon seems like your Dollar General version of Dean Cypher from Gen V.
Oh, I definitely see a little bit of that. Dean Cypher channeling, Game of Thrones Jack Sparrow, maybe. I know, I forget who like the lesbian pirate was at the end of House of the Dragon, but like the guy version of the lesbian pirate and Jack Sparrow. I wasn't sure if Lionel Baratheon wanted to fuck or fight Dunk, was one question I had. we see them like dancing and stamping on each other's toes, and then they're like Dunk's wearing his fucking crown all of a sudden, real middle school move. But we do see some interesting stuff. Like he says, you ever been punched in the face before? Big men get punched more than little men. He talks about him slouching. He says the seven above gave you tallness, so be tall. He doesn't remember what they do to heretics, which turns out they burn them. Now, one of the brother Baratheons was the one that burned people, right? Stannis, was it Stannis who burned his daughter?
Yeah.
So I think that's I
I
don't
mean,
want
it
to
was
call it a,
really the Red Queen or the
but
Red Woman.
with him, and he's talking about burning heretics. I don't even know what you're supposed to do with them. Like, I think that's where that was
I might
going.
call them heretics, but you can call them heretics.
Same thing. Another kind of interesting quote for him, and he had several. One was like, all men wish for your helper head. What are you wishing for? And he was like, supper. So they're pushing and flirting. We
I
hear him.
mean, like,
What
I
did you?
don't give either, but I think I would rather have head.
True. So, yeah, what did you make of the dancing scene and this? I think we're more used to seeing like the Lannisters and the stag, maybe. But I know that they were married to Baratheon and that one, and so
Yeah.
half of one, six of another, and they're killing the stag. Are the Lannisters supposed to be lions? Is that what they are? Or...
Yeah. Lannisters are lions, and I couldn't, like, with the flags and the sigils and all that sort of stuff. I am not that deep into the lore, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like,
I just know I
wasn't
saw a lot of
Baratheon's
antler.
whole thing where like he went out on a hunt to kill a stag and got gutted by the
Well,
boar
he
or
got gutted by,
something?
yeah, he got gutted by the boar, and there's the like the symbolic nature of the Lannister, Pappy Lannister cutting the stag open in the tent that one time. But yeah, I think my main thing is I didn't see a lot of flags, but I saw a lot of antlers, and when we got a Baratheon, so that's where we are.
You're horny, baby.
How about that? So I thought it was interesting. Sir Dunk, the only knight I know with high levels of anxiety, the anxious knight, he called it agonizing. It is what it was. But to get to that, what Lionel Baratheon said was drive I on into the storm. And he said, weren't you scared? And he said, in every men, there are many men. And I thought that was an interesting quote. And he just mentioned that, you know, you can't agonize over it. And he's, I agonize over agonizing. And
And I love that just in that so many of your theories in the last year have been about like a little man inside puppeting.
oh,
Like if you're
yeah,
made of many men, I can see where
that's
that would strike true for you.
yeah. So we get him saying, what chance do I have really? And he, you know, Lionel says no chance. And then he says, but it's a great honor to test oneself against a worthy foe. So he's really laying in the poetry here. Game of Thrones deaf poetry jam. And then that's when he says, a knight without a knight is no horse at all. We get kind of this as that he's walking away. The person that he was supposed to meet, Sir Manfred, is finally, he catches him going out of the tent with his whores. And there's this diatribe about, did he hang Dornishman, or he was hung like a Dornish, or some type of dog and pony show there, but he's basically be gone and dismisses him. Sir Dunk needs somebody to vouch for him at some point. He comes back to his camp, and Egg is just cooking a fish, asks if he wants one. He says he rode, I think, was it in the back of a lamp cart? Was that what he said he came in on?
Yeah, frickin' lamb carts.
And then we heard from Sir Dunk, like he talked about him having to take him all the way back to King's Landing. So Sir Dunk wrongfully assumes he's from Flea Bottom, not knowing he's maybe of a higher
That's a
stature
really
still.
good pull on your part.
So how about that? It's not the only thing I pulled this weekend.
Oh,
I was
too much.
lifting, lots of moving, you know, hamstring issues. It just a lot of little funny stuff. Like, I would have raised your pavilion, but I couldn't find one. And he starts talking about the trees, and he says trees leak. And so we get it. Dunk is short for Duncan the Tall. And he talks about, you know, basically we get to a after attorney, we'll see. He says he's really good with getting food and cleaning clothes. He cleaned his stank ass outfit. He says, I promise not to beat you except when you deserve it. And he talks about being only a hedge knight. I didn't know what a clout in the ear is. I know it's like a punch in the ear or whatever, but I didn't know we got
I
that a
think
couple
it
times.
actually came up 3 times in this episode.
Yeah, at least twice, and three wouldn't surprise me. So we get an interesting thing where Egg is like the little kids staying up, but they're under the stars because they have no pavilion, and so they can see the falling star. And Egg's bringing it up, and Dunk is annoyed by it, but then he's, oh, so the luck is ours alone, because he mentioned the other knights would be under their silk pavilions and wouldn't get to see it. So I thought this was, I get you wanted like a cliffhanger, but I thought this was a cute button on the first episode. And we did get to the point where we got this hero's journey to the end where these two come together and they're together now, you know what I mean? And so we did get some closure there. Other thoughts kind of on the back end of this episode?
I have a lot of faith in the franchise that like it'll grow from here. There will be tensions. There is a good story to be told. But just where I am in at this moment, after watching all these shows of grown-ups with reluctant children coming along with them, and just because I watched another show last night with that like exact same thing, that's where I'm. Oh, so this whole episode was just to get him to accept Egg as his squire.
But it's also setting up the stakes of this first season, I believe, are going to be the tournament, and we're dealing with somebody that doesn't have anything. So if he loses, like, what's a knight without a horse, So I think those are the stakes. I assume you didn't watch the preview for what's coming on this dog and pony show?
I hung on through the credits, but just the way that I watched it through my app didn't have that available.
I'm not going to give away a ton, but I'll just say this. There's a trial by combat tease, and there's there's stuff coming that maybe that'll wet your action whistle until next week. But any other
I've
thoughts?
got a real bloodlust over here, Craig.
We're starting a new show. I'm excited to kind of get into it, and it has begun, but it's not a super long season.
Let me just ask you this. Does it feel like there's been the fanfare for this show just, and you have different algorithms and different, your Twitter's different than mine. I don't feel like there's a lot of buzz about this show, definitely compared to Game of Thrones or even House of the Dragon. It feels like this is almost sneaking out under the cover of Night of the Seven Kingdoms. But does it feel as big as some other shows that we cover?
I'll answer that three different ways.
Whoa,
One,
you're doing a three-way.
the first thing that was interesting to me was the 7 p.m. time frame. Now, I don't remember when Game of Thrones was on. Did it air later because of the content? Did they air the mature content later originally? But I'm just used to the premiere HBO show starting a little earlier. So that was the first thing that kind of got my attention. Certainly House of the Dragon, the first season was like the first season after Game of Thrones. Second season was a second season. So both of those things had a little more fanfare. So I think that's definitely fair to say. But the other thing, and the third way I'll answer it, is I don't think we're going to know for a few weeks. I'm sure we'll see the numbers. I think the numbers will be okay, but it's a different time slot than most of the shows that hit.
And it's a different time of year. I mean, like traditionally, this stuff comes out in summer. And who knows how the HBO calendar is all stacked up for this year. But there aren't a lot of, like, how many times have we done a show and there's, oh, geez, Yellow Jackets is coming out right on top of some other show, or Only Murders is coming out right alongside Rings of Power or other things like that.
And to that point, I don't know if I'm not a pit guy, so I don't know if the pit has that prime slot before it. We know this isn't a full hour show, and we've been rochambeaued by the fake Netflix timelines, but my understanding, it's looking 6 episodes. This was the longest episode we're going to get all season. So it's 31, 37, 33, 34, and 31 minutes, even on the finale. So
your new favorite show.
Yeah, in that regard, that might have been why they picked that later time frame, because it's less important when it ends, kind of thing, would be my guess. And if the pit's on earlier. So I think there are other shows going on right now, but not ones that you and I are as heavy into. But I think there's stuff that other people are watching that we aren't, The Pit being one of those examples. And yeah, so it's interesting, but I'll be, like I said, I think this is a show that might need to burn a few weeks and it's only got 6 weeks in. But my understanding, I think we're getting House of the Dragon this summer. We're
Okay.
getting this show, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, next year, because these are short season, short episodes. And then I don't know if the final season of House of the Dragons like in the next year or how that's going to fly, but some version of that. So we're planning on getting more content than we've got with this show in a long time, even though these first 6 episodes are shorter. We still have House of the Dragon season 3 to come this year.
I gotta ask.
Yeah.
I put a note in. I appreciate the character, like those kind of dropped on YouTube. Where they came from. I think Tom was probably done the dirtiest.
I didn't see it. I don't know what you're talking about.
So there's like a card over our YouTube that's like a caricature version of all three of us.
Okay. Yeah, I had nothing to do with it. So let me
Oh,
see what's
really?
on
Well,
there.
I've
Yeah.
got three Charlie Brown hair wisps
Okay. I
and
have nothing to do with it.
like a monkey wearing like a ski hat. But like the informal poll that I took, you got the best rendition of the three of us.
Considering, I mean, getting a better rendition that Tom shouldn't take a lot with how he showed up. Let me see this. This is my first pass at this. I don't know that yours isn't as good as any here.
Only because I'm like way down in the back.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of winners here, to be super clear. I mean,
Kind of,
I mean, Tom's is almost borderline racist.
yes. I mean,
No,
except that they whitewashed him a little bit, but that's okay.
I thought that you were referencing the pause screen. And I can pick for the podcast, but you get 3 choices. So episode 4, I picked a shitty one for me. I didn't know if episode 5 was shitty for you. I didn't know what you're talking about. I hadn't even seen it yet. So
Okay.
that is not Craig Lake approved. That I don't want anyone to think that racist
I did try and
imagery.
do like a snip of mine and blow it up, but it just got so distorted because it's so small
Yeah,
that
that's what I've heard. That's what the ladies say. Yeah. So yeah,
like I think it's a fun concept and cool, but at
I
the
mean,
same time I was
I
like,
definitely think Chris Hansen is waiting for you somewhere based on that picture.
got a nice cool glass of lemonade waiting for me.
And I definitely think that Tom's caricature bled into mine a little bit. So yeah, that's a good time. And I have no facial hair, which God knows why. But yeah, no, I like it. Anything else you want to cover?
I've been trying so hard to grow. I get 3 wisps. I get a
that
Charlie Brown.
that wasn't a good representation for you, Dan. I apologize.
That's okay. It's all fun.